we got a great audience here. So thank you everyone for joining today. So we're going to jump into the webinar here. We're hoping to go about half an hour in content and then about 10 minutes in questions at the end. So today we're here to talk about a new solution from Genetec, which is focused on smart cabinet management. So this is an issue that's been interesting for me to follow over, been in the industry maybe about 11, 12 years now. And I remember learning about the number 2 key when I joined the industry years and years ago, and still blown away, despite all the cybersecurity focus, that this issue has not been solved in any meaningful way. So I don't want to give away, all the secret sauce or what Ray's pitch is going to be around this, but I'm sure you guys will sympathize with the frustration and kind of the challenge that is presented and continues to be an issue with traffic cabinets. So let me jump right into it and start with some basic introductions. So my name is Michael McGuire. I'm president of Bermuda Digital, and I'm joined by Ray Keys, who's a Pathfinder from Genetec, and he kind of leads the solutioning and product management of this smart lock solution from Genetec. So today we're gonna, hey Ray. So first we're gonna start by looking at introduction to the company. So who are we? I'm gonna be very brief with that. I'm hoping, I see a lot of you are very recurring attendees, which is great. But more importantly, introduce Genetec. It sometimes surprises me how many people don't know what they do. So I'm gonna look at who is Genetec, what do they do, and then we'll get into the actual problem we're trying to solve, how we're trying to solve it, and then we'll finish off with a live demo where we're able to show you a demonstration system of a lock, as well as some of the features within Genetec Security Center and what you can do and how they complement each other so well. And then of course, finishing it off with a Q&A. So one thing to keep in mind, if you see there's a poll question giveaway, so just pay attention to some of the content in there as we go through. The question will ask you something about the presentation and the solution, and the winning answer will get a nice little bundle of merch from us. And as we go through, you'll see on the right-hand side bar for your GoToWebinar application, there is a questions box. So at any time during the presentation, you can put questions in there, and it won't pop up at me or anything or disturb me. So please, as you think of them, just pop them in there, and at the very end, we'll get to that. But also, when we're answering the poll question, that's the same space where you go in there and put your answer. So people will just put A, B, C, or D, whichever your selection is. First one to put it in there and get the right answer will be called out and provided the prize. So just keep that in mind, and I'll jump right into it. So as I said, Bermuda Digital is our company name. It's formerly Stinson ITS. So probably that's the biggest thing I want to reiterate here. We did a rebrand in September of last year, and that's still kind of filtering through the market. So same company, everything operationally is the same within the organization. It's just aligning with our global brand. So our company was acquired in 2022, and we just finally decided a unified brand strategy late last year, and so now we're the North American branch of Bermuda Digital, and we are joined with some other companies within Canada that make up Bermuda Canada. Stinson, our parent company, as well as Bermuda Services, used to be Direct Traffic and Ontario Barrier Wall. But in ITS, or Bermuda Digital, we are a turnkey solution provider, so we can provide you kind of start to finish project inception, design consultation, to selling a product, integrating it, delivering it, monitoring, maintenance, all that. So that's us in a nutshell. But more importantly, this is Genetec. So Genetec is also a Canadian company based in Montreal. Really great guys. We've been working together for probably 6 or 7 years now, and a great story to them. So founded in 1997, focused on video management. So their core software is called Security Center, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but they started off in video management and have kind of now added a ton of solutions and modules that kind of touch different verticals. but they still are, more than anything, the #1 global video management software provider, and #2 in access control. So one of the leading vendors in the security and monitoring space, and what I put in parentheses there, #1 in access control within the enterprise market. So that's large companies, large organizations, such as traffic departments and agencies and things like that. So they are the #1 platform, which makes it perfect to pair an access management solution with, and that's one of the big values of offering the solution from them. So what is Genetec Security Center? It is a software platform that's meant to centrally aggregate data and control your field devices. So as I mentioned, it started in video management, moved into a lot of other verticals, focused on security primarily, but also about 5 years ago, they started getting into the traffic space. So they're also able to ingest fleet and AVL data. They control message signs, lane control signs. They can ingest traffic data, weather sensor data, and even travel time sensor data, like from our AIS travel time sensor. So they do a lot, but today we're focusing primarily on the access control function and how the hardware cabinet solution interfaces with their central software. You may or may not be aware of it, but Genetec Security Center is by far the most popular within the traffic industry, but especially in Canada, it's very dominant within traffic operations centers. So the MTQ, City of Montreal, City of Toronto, Region of York, you name it, I think probably 60 or 70% of all major cities utilize Genetec to drive their video walls. So often you don't notice Genetec, but when you go into a traffic operations center, you see the big video wall, and that's often Genetec that's driving that. And so that's the core software platform that we leverage to manage all of these access control devices that we're going to get into. And that's a little screenshot of the access control module within the security center environment. And so now we're going to jump into that #2 key, the core problem that we're talking about. And I'm going to pass it over to Ray to kind of give some background and what we're trying to solve and what is the real risk and the reason why this is a big problem. And we'll leave it with him to get into the solution a bit too. But Ray, thanks for joining us, and please take it away.
Cool, thank you. I'm glad to be involved with this and looking forward to meeting everybody. I've been involved with traffic a little over 17 years now, and it's interesting because I've only recently become aware of the reality of the #2 key. I have one on my keychain that I carry with me. People are amazed when they find that out, and we all know about it, but the issue is that, you know, years ago, it wasn't an issue, and it's just now becoming an issue where we've pushed so much out to the edge. So next slide. We're looking at where we stand in our industry, and it used to be that we just had controllers, you know, out on the edge, but now we're adding so many pieces and so much technology. So we have vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, we have vehicle to E, vehicle to everything, and all of these things are happening at one time. And so it used to be that just protecting endpoints like building to building and that type of thing mattered where we had people, but now in between we have these unmanned infrastructures, and it's not just traffic. I mean, it's utilities, it's everything out there. But now that we started to put network out into these pieces, they become vulnerable. I've touched on some of these devices, but the ultimate thing we're talking about today is the edge. They used to have controllers, now they have sensors. Now they used to just control the signals. Now they control all these other pieces. And in addition to what we have in these cabinets right now, we also have to think about the future equipment and what's coming in there, and somehow have to be prepared for that. And I think it's worth pausing right now to ask yourself this question. Right now, where you are, where you work, how do you get in and out of your building? You're a paid employee. And the fact of the matter is, usually you have to have some sort of credentials to get in and out of that building. And if you're like me, I'm an employee, they allow me in the building, but they don't allow me into the machine room or just next to some of the critical hardware. And yet we protect those things, but all this critical hardware we pushed out in the edge. And in this case, they're all protected, just like we said, by this #2 key. that you can find. I found it as low as $10, and then this next slide shows you that I just pulled this off of eBay just a couple weeks ago, and if you focus in there, it was $18 US. So that's a scary thought. Next slide.
Yeah, that opens, I don't know what the number is, I would guess 90% plus cabinets in North America.
That's correct. And it's interesting because we're mentioning North America, but it's actually worldwide. Smaller percentage outside of the Americas, but in the Americas, probably 90% of the cabinets. Yeah, it's shocking. So think about this number. What goes through your mind? What would you think this number is?
Yeah, it's a big number.
It is, yeah. Well, that is the average cost US to mitigate a cybersecurity attack. That's no small number. And the fact of the matter is we now have evidence that people have been able to get into our networks, our public networks, through a traffic cabinet. It's happened in one particular state. They don't advertise it, but they were hit with malware to the tune of $43 million. And it took them a little over $7 million to mitigate it. So as you might imagine, this is kind of a scary scary reality that we're in. And again, it wasn't an issue 40 years ago or 10 years ago. You know, it's suddenly now an issue, and so we have to address it. Next slide. Oh yeah, and we're not just talking about one device out on the edge, are we? If you think about it, how many edge devices do you have out there? Whether it's a signal cabinet or it's an ITS cabinet, your utilities, all of these things, and how many of them have network going to them? And what about this one particular cabinet? What if it's 2 o'clock in the morning? What if it's open? Would you really know? And would you know if somebody opened it and then they closed it and they put some sort of a device, a monitoring device in there they can come back to and eventually break into your system? That's what we're dealing with here. Next slide. So how do we solve this? Next slide. We started off to, you can go ahead and just advance this whole screen. We don't have to worry about all the animations. Ultimately, if you look at my camera, we started with just a traditional Corbin lock. And as you can see, it's not connected. And there's a key that goes in this. You move the top, you insert your key. And we can add smart keys and we can do all that, but ultimately this lock is just not connected to your system. So although we can control what goes in and out of this lock and who accesses it, we don't know when this plunger is actually, the bolt's actually extended. So what we believe is we treat the same way you can access a network on the edge and in your building, we treat the edge the same way by having an electronic lock, and I'm holding one in my hand. The idea is that you have some sort of electronic lock, you have an IoT device, you have a way to open this lock on the edge and also remotely open it. And the number one goal here is to address cybersecurity. And then of course, we call that access management, being able to manage everything in and out of this. Next slide. What makes up the components of this? There are 3 components. And actually, there's a lot of text on this slide, but I think you can kind of advance through this, and some of these are underlined. Oh no, we didn't have that. But I will note, in this case, first and foremost, the idea of having real-time information of what's going on with your exterior, on what's going on the edge and with all your hardware out there. The idea of being able to integrate everything that's out there, having advanced reporting, all those little pieces are great. But what's really critical is being able to scale this to thousands, because ultimately this is what Genetec's been doing for years. If you look at your airports, your public buildings, your universities, all those places have been using this access management software for all these years, and all we're doing is applying the same software, but we're adding these 3 components to your exterior cabinets, all of which are NEMA TS2 rated, and they're rated to work in this environment, right? So you need an electronic lock, you need some sort of an IoT device. In this case, we actually have our own piece of hardware that's NEMA TS2 rated, and it was created initially because we, at the time, couldn't get anybody to meet Genetec standards. And then being able to access the cabinet itself with a card reader or your phone or your computer, the same way you would do that within a secure facility. Next slide. I want to point out on this that this particular lock, we partnered with Assa Abloy, which they are the largest in the world. They're they do it right. They build the best locks out there. It's made of the best materials, and it's connected with the same 4 bolts that your existing Corbin locks have. So it's in a matter of minutes you can retrofit your existing cabinets if they have this set up. And I just wanted to point that out because it's a pretty easy, almost plug and play solution. Next slide.
Oh, so this is me jumping in here now. So we have a quiz question. We're going to post it. The next page is going to have the question, and then it's going to have 4 options, A, B, C, D. So as I mentioned, if you just open up your side panel to be ready to answer quickly, the first person to put the correct answer in the box, Samantha will be watching, and she'll announce the winner. You'll see what you're winning, and then we'll move on to the back to the webinar. So here's the question. So in 2023 worldwide, the average cost of a data breach has reached a record high of X amount, an increase of 2% compared to 2022. So what is that amount? I'm going to put them all down quickly. It's A, B, C, or D. So put your answer now in the box, and we'll see who gets it first.
So we we had some people who were really paying attention. So before we even had the options up to choose from, they had already answered. So the first person almost immediately was Chad. Congratulations. We will contact you afterwards to get your shipping address.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for being so attentive.
Impressive.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Sorry, Sam.
So just wanted to make sure I pointed out that the answer was B, because there were a few other answers in the questions window.
Okay. Were the early people just putting random letters in, or were they actually putting the full dollar amount?
The full dollar amount.
Oh, wow. Chad, you're good?
Yeah.
There you go. All right, live demo. So now we're going to pass over control to Ray, and he's going to run through. You've seen it now in his background, but he's got a cabinet there. And so if you focus in on the webcam stream and make that a little bit bigger, he can show you that. But before we do that, Sam will pass over presentation permissions to Ray if you want to throw up your screen first, and then we'll jump into the cabinet.
Okay. Here we go.
Perfect. That's working now.
Great. So I just went straight to what we call Security Desk and Security Center, and this is just a few of the widgets that are added to Genetec Security Center. And in this case, I figured we'd start from scratch and just show how kind of simple it is. I'm going to click on a monitoring tab, and it brings up this screen, and there happens to be on the left-hand side a number of demo enclosures. And I want to monitor this particular one that somebody has named it Jesse. I think there's a Toy Story theme going on here. And at this moment, we're monitoring that cabinet. So if somebody were to swipe a card on that cabinet or something like that, it would show up. But I can also take the screen and I can drag and drop this cabinet over, an icon shows up. I can actually double click on that cabinet and you can see I can unlock it from here. There's a control panel over to my right where you can unlock it from there. But also what you'll see in some of these, your TMC is that it's so simple to use. I can actually change the tile pattern. You can make custom ones. I'm gonna add this one, make it 6 so it shows a little bit more. And I can also add here, I wanna see who goes in and out. And since I have this cabinet behind me, I'm gonna open this cabinet from here and hit unlock. And it'll show up right here and show that it was manually unlocked, and it'll actually show up here that it was locked. My particular demo cabinet, I have a number. You have to look at my camera. I don't know if you can make it bigger on your screen, but I have a number of access cards. And so as I swipe an access card, just like a user would, and I'm gonna leave the cabinet open, here is the bolt on the cabinet itself. I don't know if you can see it, but when I swipe this card, you'll see the bolt retract. And if you look at the software, you see who's done that. And of course, whoever comes up, who's ever in our system can come up and it shows that they've accessed it, and they'll let anybody into this cabinet. Yeah, so what if somebody were to pick up like a hotel key, a room key? I've got one of those and we haven't given them permission. I can take that and swipe it and it'll show that access denied, and it'll also show at the top here that access was denied. And what's interesting about that is just if you can imagine any access management rules you'd have at an airport or a secure facility, I could say, let's just say Michael is working for us and we've decided, he's gone crazy on us and we've let him go and we can revoke his privileges in real time. And when that happens, if he swipes his card, it'll show up that he tried to get into the cabinet, but it also will deny him access. But more than that, you can set up any kind of event to action. You can say, you know what, if that card shows up, send an email, start a flashing light, send the police. You could do anything along those lines. And I was just thinking, I mentioned a hotel room key. Just kind of goes to show you, depending on your system and your types of cards you have, here is the hotel room key I have. And I've actually enrolled it in our system and it's gaining me and giving myself access. I can do the same thing with my company ID, where I can do the same thing and do that. So this is one piece that you have, but we could go and build any sort of a dashboard if you'd like. We can add a map. I've just added a map in here and showed a cabinet on this map. Hopefully everybody can see that. And it's the same thing. You can add your maps. If you can imagine an airport or a 50-story building, every sensor, every door, anything you can imagine, the gates outside, all of those can go in and you can have 3D models and pull them up. So if you can do that, you can easily do this with a two-dimensional, Google map or whatever you choose to pull in. And I can take this and of course, same thing that we did before. I can unlock the door from the map itself. I can bring up this in here. I can run health reports. There's an interesting, I added some health reports here and it has to do with a lot of hardware that's not even connected to the system. So it's showing that it's not working, but you can set those pieces up and any of these types of things that you set up, you can create events to action so that you can, any type of settings and combinations of settings as they occur, you can do things with them. You can activate, who does what and when and how to react. Same thing over here, door activities. I can see, this is just has 2 people in here. So I can say how many times has Angie or Stan and so on and so forth, how many times was access denied, all of those pieces. And I'm thinking,
so
Michael.
On that point, Ray, since you got the cabinet behind you, I wanted to just re-review kind of the hardware components, because I think we might have gone a bit fast through that. So if you see on the door, there's the actual latch mechanism, which is the same mechanism as you'd have now. It just has that solenoid attachment on the back side of it to allow it to be actuated. So on the door itself, it has that. So it 4 bolts and you can replace it. And that mechanism is how we're solving the number 2 key issue up front. So on the front side of that mechanism, there's like on the door itself, right? There's a new key type. So there's 2 that are supported. They have a new smart key from Genetec, which you could use, which kind of remembers offline every time it's used in a lock. It can work with padlocks and stuff as well. But there is a bit of process associated with managing these keys. So the alternative method is you can get the exact same retrofit lock, but it has a custom keyed traditional mechanical lock. So like the number 2 key, but a secure style lock that can't be purchased anywhere, can only be ordered securely through Genetec. So if you like the mechanical key, don't want to adopt the new smart key, that's still fully within the solution's purview. So we have that piece of kind of updating what is the lock or key access from the outside. And then inside we have the edge device. And so this edge device is the key function is to allow a secure connection from the edge to the central software. And the other big benefit of this is that it can store credentials locally. So you add a card reader and you think, okay, well, this sounds great, but what happens when the power goes out or the network goes down or something? And so there's certain conditions. And so in this case, if the network were to go down, this device remains. As long as you still have power, this device remains in the cabinet and will still allow you to tap in and out with your phone or with your key card. And
to jump in, Michael, on that, I could remove the network from this modem right here and it still holds all those credentials. So I could still swipe a card. And then once the network resumes, comes back online, of course, it will show up in your home office, or your home system. But yeah.
Yeah, and then the final condition is all power's off. That's
Mhm.
really the only time you'd ever resort to your mechanical key.
Yeah.
And so regardless of conditions, worst case, you do always have a key to revert to if everything's dead. But in most cases, you won't have to touch that key almost ever. And I know a lot of the feedback we've gotten from clients is around managing access for contractors, especially short-term contractors, meeting people to drop a key off to them, and then getting it back from them is a total pain. These HID cards, are on the order of a few dollars each, so they're kind of disposable. So you can kind of program a key, give it to a contractor, and then set a time bin of when you want them to have access, say, from 9 to 5 for 2 weeks. And then once they're done their work, you can just tell them, okay, throw out the card or keep it. We're going to just disable it in the system. And you don't have to go through the hassle of trying to collect these and manage these key cards. They can all be managed in the software, and you don't need that kind of back and forth in person. And that's really beyond the fact that it's now secure, you have logging and all that, but just managing the access for third parties is dramatically improved. And not only that, if you don't have a key card, don't want to drive all the way to give it to somebody, you can just have them call you on site and you can remotely unlock it. So you can be completely touchless and centrally managed.
Michael, that brings up a really big point that we really kind of blew by, but the idea of the Genetec Security Center, what's exciting about this is we have just showed you the door locks, but you can associate cameras, you can associate, and as I mentioned, any devices to these things and create events to actions, but operationally is the area where we were just looking at cybersecurity and securing the edge and securing your network. But what we found out is the idea of being able to have a contractor show up and call you up and say, hey, I'm here, and you just remotely open the cabinet for them, or you take a local camera and turn it and look and you can see that they're there. Or you could even go ahead and say, you know what, swipe your card on it, even though you don't have access, and you could set that camera up to say anybody swipes a card, take a look at it, and you could verify that way. Another thing we didn't mention too is that we have remote access, and so in lieu of just having some sort of an app on your phone, the same security center that you have with your remote access on your computer, you also can have on your phone. And so it's secure. So if you can see that bolt, I've had this running a little bit, but I can actually unlock the bolt from my phone, and it just retracted the bolt, which is interesting. I'm on a cellular network. This is in an Azure cloud, running in an Azure cloud somewhere in the world, and it happens that fast. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of pluses you can do with that. I'll throw this little caveat in there too. We have some agencies that actually they bill for time on site. And so contractors literally swipe their card on the door and open the cabinet. And then when they leave, they swipe their card to leave. And that's actually their billable hours. It's been pretty interesting what's come out of that over time, and how the billing has changed a little bit. I'll leave it at that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and one more point on kind of the different options available. I think the HID card is probably my preferred method, but it does also support keypad access. So if you don't want to give out cards, you can have a numerical keypad on the exterior. Right. So that's the final piece. On the left-hand side that Ray keeps tapping is a small card reader. And that can just as easily be a keypad as well instead of utilizing cards.
Right. You can actually associate a keypad with specific doors, so you can control 4 doors separately. You can control access to those doors separately. But what we found is you set the bolt to retract for just a few seconds and then go back. So usually most agencies are just using a regular reader and swiping it. It opens all 4 locks at the same time, shuts them all at the same time. One thing we've seen that's been interesting is we've seen a good bit of vandalism, and specifically with the locks, and you all may have experienced this, and that is somebody's been opening up and putting gum or even glue in the keyholes. And we know over time the only way you can fix that is to drill the lock out, unless somehow you can get that out of there. But that solves that too, because the bottom line is I can remotely, if somebody gets there and they can't put their regular key in there, physically they can't get it in there, you can just remotely open the cabinet. So that's, we just experienced that where somebody was upset about it, and I mentioned he'd forgotten that he could do that. So
Yeah, well, that reminds me as well, something we didn't highlight too much is that there's also position sensors within that lock. So you can know if the lock has been fully retracted and returned to home position. So that's useful in the case where some people will typically half lock the cabinet while they're still working on it, and they might forget to fully latch it when they leave. And so the system's able to tell when the latch has not been fully extended again. So you know it's half open. And so that's really useful so that those conditions don't happen and a random person can't see the handle half cocked and go up and open the cabinet. So that's another feature that we didn't touch on as well.
that's a great point, because most of you might already have door position switches, and so you'll know if the door is open, but you've seen this. So I'm going to go ahead and close the door. And to reiterate what Michael said, that door position switch is telling you the door is locked. And I can even move this handle down to here, and at a glance, it looks like it's locked. Now, I've seen this plenty of times where people go to lunch and they'll do this, and even though the door is shut, they'll just come right back and open the lock. So you can run real-time reports. You can tell me, are both of those conditions met on all 4 doors? Tell me, run a report at 3 a.m. in the morning, or whenever, the end of the day, or anytime somebody accesses this cabinet, run a check 30 minutes later, anytime it's been accessed, to make sure that both of those conditions are met and the cabinet's actually secure. You don't get that. That's probably the biggest issue, is with your original Corbin lock that's not connected. You have no idea if this bolt is retracted or not. And that's what we're going for, is total security of your network, the same way you would do it in your building.
Well, I was supposed to switch back and let me just pull up my demo again. Sam, if you can make me presenter, perfect. So Ray, is there anything else you wanted to add before we jump into questions?
No, I think that's it. Hopefully everybody on the call, they understand kind of the comfort level. This is a pretty real solution, and you can reach out to either one of us at any time. Michael, I've learned a lot from him, and I'm learning a lot about this solution as we attack it every day. And we learn from you guys, as you all, as the end users as well. There are many, many more features, but if you can just imagine anything that you could do that over the years you've applied to any secure facility, we're doing the same thing for these doors. And the benefits that are coming out of this are further beyond than we ever expected. And so the return on your investment, when it comes down to man hours saved, miles driven, less miles on your car, and affecting the environment, and being able to manage more cabinets with less, is over time really starts to stack up. So we're pretty excited to share this with you and get this out in the field.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm hoping there's a bunch of questions, but maybe I'll open it up to Sam. You want to let us know, are there questions? And if so, can you go ahead and shoot, and we'll do our best to answer them.
There are a few questions already. Someone asked, are the credentials for the key cards done via the security desk?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, and it can be done in real time. So a card has to be enrolled in the system. It's really that simple, and you can use any sensor within your system. So you noticed I had a card that was I set up for Michael. I actually sat here, I brought up in Security Center, I opened up card holder management. It's one of those mini tiles you saw, and I just said enroll a card. I gave him credentials. I gave him all access into what doors and during what times, and it said present your card. I actually presented it on this reader, but you could do that in a reader that's on the system, right outside your door if you wanted, or on your if you had something on your desk.
Oh, that's interesting, actually. Great, just to expand on that. So if a contractor went up, scanned it, it rejected, it didn't work, they could call in and say, hey, I just tried to get it, it's not working. They could enroll them on the spot and re-enable their permissions. Okay.
That's right. Great. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up.
Someone asked, so if the cabinet was hit and knocked off the pedestal and had no power, you can still access the cabinet with a secure key and it would still have tracking of that access?
Yes and no. Not a trick answer. If you lose connectivity, you lose connectivity. I mean, it's that simple. But I mean, if the cables are still connected and you still have power, you would know if that cabinet door was opened. However, if you use some sort of a key or something to get in mechanically to access that cabinet, once the cabinet was brought back online, you would know, what key opened it. Or if you took that smart key and actually plugged it into a system, you would know then. But yeah,
so
first and
so with the
foremost,
offline, sorry, Ray.
well, I was just going to say, first and foremost, if you have a cabinet that's knocked over or knocked off, the first thing you would know is that you have a cabinet that's been knocked over and knocked off. So you got bigger problems than tracking who opens that door.
Yeah, but just to go slightly into the key choice, because really that will determine somewhat the answer to this question. So there's the dumb mechanical key that's securely made, but doesn't have any smarts built into it beyond that secure design. So that one, you'd have no idea. You'd be able to access the cabinet with no power, but you'd have no idea, that somebody had done that. The big advantage to the smart key that we showed, that little one that looks like a car key, that one has some logging built into it. So anytime it's inserted into a lock, there's actually an information exchange that occurs with the cylinder so that it reads and can tell it's plugged into a lock. And so it would log on the key itself that it's been used. And then the process for managing those logs is to bring that back to your office, and you kind of pair it with a device in your office, and it will download all the logs from that key, and then that would filter into the Genetec system. You would know that that key was used. But that's kind of a roundabout way to get that. But that does record those incidents even with no power on. And that's why those keys are also able to be used with padlocks and a bunch of other, non-connected devices.
Right. That's correct.
Someone asked, is the HID strip, does it have a battery backup? And if so, what's the runtime?
So, and I'm assuming you're talking about the card reader on the cabinet. No, it does not. But just like with, I don't know what your particular situation is, but it's a very low power draw, and typically it would. I mean, it's the same thing with the. There is not you. Trying to figure out the right way to answer this. Most cabinets we deal with have some sort of a battery backup built into the cabinet, and so both the Roadrunner, which we call it the IoT device, and the card reader would still be running for as much time as your battery backup in your system was running. Just like your controller.
There's a UPS built in, it would leverage that, but independent of that, it doesn't have its own battery backup.
Someone asked, has there been a mass deployment of this log solution by any jurisdiction in North America?
We'd have to define mass, but so we have deployments in California. It's primarily in the States so far. Florida, California, and Texas are the primary ones, also in the northeastern United States. And there are a number that are about to come online that I'm not at liberty to share right now.
But as far as the power users, Bray, like what size of deployment are you talking about for these ones? Is it a couple hundred, tens, or thousands, or?
That's yeah. So we have some that are in the tens, like close to 60 cabinets that are growing to hundreds, and we have some that started off in the hundreds. We have nothing on the scale of thousands yet, but we have a couple possibilities that are looking to happen. One of them in particular is 1,200.
No, that's all right. The biggest city here is Toronto, and that's 2,000 cabinets. So yeah, we were probably looking at, most people on the call only have tens to a couple hundred cabinets.
Yeah. Probably one of the most attractive things that we have seen is that we have agencies that are already using Genetec. So this is just a simple add to their system. They're already comfortable with everything, and they're like, why wouldn't we add this into our ecosystem?
Yeah, no, that's the key thing. And I think we've touched on it a few times, but like cities universally have access cards for all their buildings. And so the huge advantage is those same key cards could now be given permission to access all your cabinets. So you don't have to walk around with a key anymore. You can just like you would tap into the building with your name badge, you would now be able to access your cabinets in the same way. So it's one of the best things about leveraging Genetec solution is that Like there's lots of access control out there, but they're not integrated devices that can kind of leverage the software in the same way. And so you don't need to buy more software. You'd have to buy licenses for each of these new devices, but you don't have to buy the central software again. And you don't have to train operators, anybody within the city, to understand how to use it. For the most part, those are all existing processes that you can leverage, and you're just adding a couple more doors to that massive system that's already being operated. So that's the biggest advantage beyond, you know, the common sense of the core technology. But as far as practical implementation, that's the biggest advantage the Genetec solution has over some of its competitors.
That's really, I want to add some, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but one thing that's interesting about this specific solution internally with Genetec is that the hardware for this solution that we've selected, actually, when you buy the hardware, it includes the licenses, which is a little different from Genetec. Typically, you have a system, and as you add cameras because Genetec is, you know, we have over 2,000 integrations with that many different types of technologies. So as we bring in all your different types of cameras, anything and everything that's not Chinese, we pull into our system. We take that seriously. There's a license associated with that, but in this case, this specific solution, the hardware comes with the licenses. If you're familiar with it. Yeah.
Similarly, someone asked, who's the biggest road authority clients for this product?
Not
like a state DOT or a municipal agency.
right. There's some right now. I'm not at total liberty to say, but we do have some deployments in Caltrans, within Caltrans in California. Those are the ones I'm at liberty to speak to, and then some of the smaller municipalities in California.
Someone asked, how do you enroll users using NFC on their phone? Is there a smart card you can add to their Google or Apple Pay?
Right. No. Actually, the way it works with Genetec is it's actually an app within the phone that works just as a client, as a client on your computer. I hope
Yeah,
that
so
answers.
that's a Genetec app that accesses the full suite of Genetec, not just for this purpose, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Someone asked, are you partnered with any major cabinet manufacturers?
We have initially. I'm hesitating there because I can tell you when we first came out with a solution, that seems like that would be the obvious choice, is to work with the cabinet manufacturers. But we came out so early with this. It was actually before I was with Genetec, that the market was just not ready for it yet. People are now starting to realize that we need these locks. So if you are somebody who is interested in working with a specific cabinet manufacturer, we could start from the beginnings and work directly with them if that's something you're looking for.
I just want to quickly note, because we are at time, we will stay on for a few more minutes and continue answering questions. But if anyone needs to hop off, that's totally fine. This is being recorded and we will be sending it out tomorrow.
Are there a bunch more then?
3 or 4?
Okay.
No, 2, I
Are
think.
you okay to stick on and answer those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone asked, how is the device connected to the cloud? Through your own cellular plan or one provided by the city? Alternatively, can you utilize another device within the cabinet to leverage their internet connection?
That's a great question. So what I have set up here is just for demo purposes. We just have, we're running, I don't even know who the provider is, but we just have a cellular modem built into this cabinet. Typically, we just need a network connection. So as long as we're cleared through that network selection and it meets Genetec's standards, then however you have it, it's a network connection. And to that note, when you're talking about cellular, years ago, I can remember when it was such a big deal because of the cost, the load of what you're putting on the system. But anytime that you actually access this cabinet or do a card or remotely open or close it, it's the load of about like a text message. So this isn't a huge expense. But yeah, a network connection is all we need.
Yeah, so we'd be leveraging whatever city network that's existing in the cabinet. whether that's cellular or hardwire, but we would just be, getting on top of that. The key is that that network can point us back to the central Genetec server, and that's the path that's required.
Someone asked, given that the keys have been used for so long, are you seeing cities stay with a smart key and the tracking, or moving to the access card only?
I would say that the jury on that one, it's still a mix. Initially the first jump was to go with just some sort of a smart key, but then once, just getting the word out and seeing that, having remote access within your cabinet and all the benefits of that. Now that people are starting to see, we've seen some customers who have deployed just the key only, standalone, and they kind of have, they wish they would have waited so they had an electronic lock, because it's, this particular lock, this electronic unit that's connected to the lock, it's a complete replacement on the inside of this. So it's not like you can add this piece to an existing Corbin lock. You have to switch out the whole thing. So to answer your question right now, as we start to explore this and we put these out there and people see the positives of the electronic lock, they're all moving towards that.
And certainly when I learned about this, that's the route I was going. I know one of the biggest frustration is managing keys. And there is a bit of complexity to that smart key. So I'm actually a bigger fan of the solution of the more kind of dumb key, like the simple one, but a controlled source, not the number two, like a specialized, hard to order mechanical key, because you should almost never need to use that. And then for your day-to-day, 99% of the time, the card access seems like the way to go for the solution.
Yep.
Someone asked, so just to confirm, all the hardware works with proprietary TMC software from Genetec?
To my knowledge, yes.
And right to that point, do you know if it's compatible with any third-party applications or just Genetec?
Well, for instance, the lock itself, I mean, you can buy the lock directly from Assa Abloy and put it into your system or try to make it work. But
the Roadrunner and all that's an integrated solution for Genetec only, right?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of questions about ballpark pricing.
Yeah, so we'll circle back to pricing. There's a lot of different options, and so we don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that. But yeah, we'll follow up. Anybody that hasn't asked the question, please reach out to us. The next slide will have my email address, so feel free to email me about it, and we're happy to share that information. But we don't want to get into that right here.
Someone asked, does the card reader need to be on the exterior of the cabinet? I'm thinking there could be some vandalism concerns if this is the only option.
That's a valid question, a great question, as a matter of fact. And there has been vandalism. It's interesting, just to put it out there. Same thing, this is the same card reader that's on the outside of buildings that gets vandalized. So it has happened in cabinets. That is why this is OSDP and not Wiegand. Same thing when it comes to cybersecurity. So even if somebody were to take a brick somehow and smash this off and be able to get to the wires, they still have no way to access the system since it is OSDP. So that's one side of it. The other side is, can it be mounted somewhere inside the cabinet? We haven't done that yet. However, I'm personally curious and would love it if you're somebody that wants to do this. There are some options where some cabinets have vents, and depending on the mesh that's in that vent or where it's located, you might be able to slide a card up underneath the vent and do that. I think that'd be really cool. But ultimately, when you put this card reader, inside of a metal cabinet, it's kind of a modern day Faraday cage, right? But if you could get it inside of an event, that's a possibility. We've had some people explore the idea of putting a cupped recessed piece on the outside of the cabinet and putting a skin over top of that so you actually don't see the reader. My reader, although you all probably haven't noticed, it has lights on it, but some agencies, they'll turn off all the lights so you don't see that. Some have put the readers on top, so it's not like, where you view it. But that is a valid concern and something that you would think, I mean, we deal with that with buildings too, but this is out there and it's something new that people like to mess with. And let's take it a step further. That kind of tells the story. That's where we are, sadly, is that somebody is going to go and smash or deface or do something with your cabinet, and tells us even more so that we have got to do something to protect these cabinets. Yeah.
That's looking like the end of the questions for now. As we wrap up, if there's any additional questions, we'll just answer them via email, or you can follow up with Michael afterwards.
Great.
Well, thanks, Ray, for joining us, and thank you to the audience for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And as I said, Sam said, we'll send out a recording tomorrow and a copy of the slide deck. And any questions you have, shoot me an email or give me a call, and we'll be happy to work with you on trying to figure out what's a good solution for you guys. But thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to call that a quorum.